can get started.
Hi everyone, this is Martha Blomquist with NCJ-FCJ. Welcome and thank you so much for taking time to participate in a call, more of a conversation rather than a presentation today for the next hour or so. And this was a specific request that our partners, Animal Legal Defense Fund, made to check in with everyone. It's been almost a year since we had our great convening on judicial responses to animal cruelty issues, and we all think of that great meeting with considerable fondness. I was just chatting with Patricia about how we all bonded during the day and a half we were together. Animal welfare really brings out our personalities for those of us who love animals, and they're an important part of our lives, and so we had a lot to share last year. And so this is just an opportunity for the next hour or so for our Animal Legal Defense Fund partners to hear about the impact of the convening and your activities and thoughts since last year. So I wanted to start off with some introductions in-house here at the NCJ-FCJ. You had Patricia introduce herself. I also have someone else who's working on the project with us this year, and it's our student intern. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Dixon. I am an intern through the University of Nevada, Reno School of Social Work. So I'm just going to be helping Martha through for her presentation and just helping her along this process. So
thanks. And Taylor, just to let you all know, we will be offering it the judicial training in June here in Reno, and some of you on the call I know are going to be helping us as faculty, and Taylor is going to be assisting us with some of the materials. So I'm not sure if Sherry's on the, Sherry Ely's on the line. Sherry, if you are, could you say hello?
Yes, I'm on the line. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
This is Diane too. I didn't announce myself when I got onto the call. Sorry.
And
this is Judge Romero. I'm on the call as well.
Thank you, Judge Romero. Who else is on the call?
Jamie Contreras from ALDF. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat?
Jamie Contreras from Animal Legal Defense Fund.
Hi, Jamie. And just for those of you who were involved with the, well, everybody actually else on the call with the convening, Jamie is new with Animal Legal Defense Fund's work with NCJ-FCJ. So she was not part of the convening last year, but she's been very active in recent times in the partnership. So we're very happy to have her involved in our work with an Animal Legal Defense Fund.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Martha, this is Diane. Did you hear that I was on?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And this is Kathleen Wood, also from the Animal Legal Defense Fund.
Hey, Kathleen.
Hi, Lee Chitwood from Pulaski, Virginia.
Hi, Judge Chitwood. Thank you for taking the time to be on the call.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Laura is on a call, but it seems she's having trouble with her microphone right now, so she's not able to say so herself.
Oh, okay. Hi, Laura. Thanks for being on the call. So I think we've heard from everybody so far, and if anybody joins us, we'll also welcome them.
This is Phil Taylor's here, if you can hear me.
Oh, yes, Judge Taylor, I'm glad you're on the call, too. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So, as I mentioned, the purpose of the call is really to help create an opportunity for those of you who were involved in the convening last year to talk directly with Animal Legal Defense Fund partners about the convening and sort of your any reflections you've had. It's been a year, and also any activities you've been engaged in since then. And so I wanted to actually turn it over to Diane, because Diane was specifically the one to initiate the idea of having an online meeting as a follow-up. Diane, are there specific questions that you have for the judges that you wanted them to kind of respond to in terms of reflections or impact of last year's convening?
Sure. I think it's really important for the judges to address the judges. You have such a magnificent standing among your peers and colleagues. And I think it's going to be hugely beneficial to have you share with people newly introduced to this topic about the impact it has had on you since the convening and the first presentations that took place at the conferences. I can also tell you that since we spoke and since I presented for you, I did 2 very, very well-received webinars for the National Judicial College on criminal law, including the link. So we are getting the word out there to the judges, and I'm just thrilled, and I'd like to hear from you how you want us to proceed forward. What is and has been important? What do we need to impart? What should we add, delete, or edit, and so forth? Because you are, like I said, in a better position than I, but I'm totally malleable to do whatever you're bidding.
And this is Laura from ALDF. I'm not sure if you can hear me now. I'm on the phone.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. And I just wanted to echo again what Diane just said. We're really looking to get some feedback on where everyone is after, a year since our first convening. And as Diane mentioned, on the ALDF side, we're just so thrilled to be continuing this partnership with NCJ-FCJ. And I wanted to add, too, that so Kathleen Wood, our staff attorney, is on the line, of course, who did a lot of work on the tab and the resolution. And just to add to what Martha said, Jamie Contreras comes from many years with the Oregon DOJ, so she has quite a bit of experience arguing in front of judges, and we're really excited to have her participating in this project as well. So thanks, Martha. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So, Patricia, I don't know if there's anybody who's put anything in the chat, or just feel free to, your lines are unmuted, to just maybe start off with your reflections on the convening, like the experience. You were here for a day and a half, and we had a lot of exchange of information. Animal Legal Defense Fund was, staff were helpful in providing information, but then as judges yourselves, you generated important ideas and information that we ended up putting in the Animal Cruelty Technical Assistance Bulletin. So just to open it up to any one of you who you want to share sort of the impact of the convening, or how it changed your thinking and your activities and behavior on the bench or off the bench.
This is Judge Romero, and after doing the presentation along with a couple of our colleagues in Orlando for the annual conference, we sort of got our feet wet in using the PowerPoint and the tab to reach out to people. I personally, and perhaps, in a self-serving way, feel like that presentation went really well in Orlando. One of my New Mexico colleagues who is involved with the Domestic Relations, Domestic Violence Advisory Committee, sat in on that conference, and she was all fired up. When we get back to New Mexico, we need to do this, this, and this. So when we got back to New Mexico, she and I kind of, went off doing our thing that we do every day. But I did notice in our monthly, actually it's weekly, bar bulletin, some advertising for the animal law section of our state bar. And I was struck by the fact that my former law school classmates was the president of that organization, or the chair of it. And I reached out to her and said, gee, this is what we just did with Animal Legal Defense Fund. We did the presentation in Orlando. And she says, well, would you consider doing a presentation for us on that technical assistance bill? Because, of course, I sent that to her as well at their annual meeting. And I did. It was sparsely attended, but there were a good number of folks via the distance learning mechanism that they use. As a result of that, I was introduced to Positive Links New Mexico, a group that's been doing this work. And Diane, you may know them. I think you've worked with them before, but every other year they have a conference in New Mexico on this very issue, and much of what we talked about at the convening in Reno last year and what's included in the Technical Assistance Bulletin, they've been doing in New Mexico. Figure that. And I connected with them, and they're an amazing group, and I've been invited to engage with them at whatever capacity they would like me to. The folks at the law school, the Institute of Public Law, they're busy delivering training to attorneys and judges via their webinar series, and I was asked to do a webinar presentation, a 1-hour presentation on this subject and using the Technical Assistance Bulletin. The participants were staff attorneys generally who work in the domestic relations arena in our system here in Albuquerque. And they were, at least the feedback that I got from the person who organized the webinar was that they were glad to receive the information and that they kind of knew it was out there, but they hadn't seen it presented the way the Technical Assistance Bulletin presents it, and they indicated that it would be useful to them to be able to think about those things in the work they do. And then again, with the assistance of the Institute of Public Law, I was sort of put on the agenda for our annual Children's Law Institute, where myself and Rosemary Cosgrove Aguilar, the young lady who works with the Domestic Violence Family Law Section Advisory Committee, she and I co-presented for an hour and a half at our Children's Law Institute. And that was well received. Many of the attorneys who practice in my court in the dependency arena attended that, and you know, you never know how to take what attorneys tell you, but a couple of them that commented, I don't believe they're into sucking up to judges. They were being honest, I hope, with what they said. They loved the presentation, and they said this is something that we hadn't really thought about in the cases that we do, but we need to ask more questions about animals in the household and what they mean, not just to the kids, but to the parents who are going through dependency. So it's changed a lot of, well, it's allowed me to kind of bully my way in and to be involved in the awareness creation. The question I want to know, I guess, is what do we do next to weaponize, for lack of a better term, those folks who have been made aware?
Thank you so much, Judge Romero, and what a great description of a lot of activities where you're reaching not just judges, but it sounds like the legal community in general and attorneys in particular that you just mentioned. So in a variety of venues and opportunities. So, and it sounds like you're just always ready and responsive to opportunities and requests that came your way. So thank you very much. Diane, I don't know if you had any follow-up questions for Judge Romero, or if there's someone else who wants to also share some of your activities and thoughts.
This is Phil Taylor, if everybody can hear me.
Yes.
A couple things. One, I've had a career change, which has been interesting. I've gone and joined the Department of Justice as a federal immigration judge, but I continue to be involved in the animal world because I had produced several years ago an online diversion program. And through that program, I, over the past year, probably have been invited to speak at a half different places that included lots of animal control officers, prosecutors, veterinarians, people of that order. I've gone to some southeastern training, excuse me, for animal control officers, and walking through those various seminars and conferences and presentations, I always carry a copy of the booklet, and it has been an exciting part to show people that, especially these animal control officers, that this is what's been produced for judges, not only in the juvenile family court setting, but any judge can use it, They all take pictures of it. I try to send them all to the website. And through that, quite frankly, we have now courts from across the country. It's a bit self-serving, but are using my online diversion program, but they're doing it in a way that is able to help identify cases that can be cleared out easily with educational stuff, and also direct resources towards the cases that need to be done with more hands-on. Specifically from the animal control setting, they are just now getting some training about what to watch for as far as animal abuse and the link between child abuse and is the animal abuse by the child an outgrowth of their being abused. And while the court system may have recognized some of that, now the animal control officers are on the front line, and they were thrilled to hear that, you know, their work's not going unnoticed and that judges are going to be a lot more on the same page. And they've taken that back to their courts, and hopefully they're hitting the website. Hopefully they're getting copies of it, or at least reviewing it. And it's been an amazing kind of year, I think, from my perspective, in hitting places that are not necessarily directly judicial, but those folks that are feeding these cases into the system. They were, everybody I talked to from I did a small presentation last week for about 20 people here in Georgia that was convened by the Humane Society. And it's all different types, prosecutors to animal control officers to Humane Society people, and they were just astounded that booklet was produced, and we're thrilled to have it. So I think that there's tremendous excitement out there for it, and certainly up for expanding it. But it's been well received in places where I wouldn't think they would have a huge interest in it, but they try to steal my last paper copy and I won't let them do it. So.
We have more of those, Judge Taylor.
I tell them to take pictures of it with their phone, take a picture of the front and back and get on the website and either to ALDF or over to the National Council's website and try to pull it up or contact them. But I'm down to one, and really it's surprising at how well it was received. I was at a conference last October. Diane was there, and I just had it sitting on the table, and it was just amazing the different people that came up and the prosecutors looking for ways to properly address cases and being bogged down and not know which way to turn, and carrying that information back to their courts, saying, hey, here's what we need to identify cases that need to go and cases that need lots of attention. And so they were thrilled with it. That's been my experience.
Thank you so much, Judge Taylor. And again, what a great example, similar to Judge Romero, of ending up having impact on stakeholders, animal control folks, Humane Society rescue folks in that context. So really having far-reaching impact with the message, and you being a spokesperson and being on the bench and connecting with other people who care about the issues, and getting the word out about the Technical Assistance Bulletin as a resource, and then finding that people are really so receptive to it. So thank you for your activities as well, and for sharing what you have been doing and who you've been hearing from and working with. So I didn't know if anybody with Animal Legal Defense Fund had any particular questions for Judge Taylor or Judge Romero, or we could move on to hearing from Judge Chitwood.
This is Laura. It's just so heartening to hear.
Okay, with me to move on. Oops.
No, that's okay, Diane. This is Laura. I was just going to say it's very heartening to hear just how much Judge Romero, Judge Taylor, and others have really been taking this project on, in their own time, and for conferences that you might be attending already, and infusing the animal cruelty component. And Judge Romero, we're familiar with that New Mexico conference. Diane, I believe you have presented a number of times in the past, and so fortunate for them that you, Judge Romero, are plugged into that group as well. So just really, really thrilled to hear how the tab and the project overall has been received.
Laura, Judge Chitwood, did you have any thoughts or reflections from last year's convening, and any conversations maybe you've had with colleagues or anything that you've been either doing on the bench or off the bench?
Sure. Well, first of all, when I got back, I met with my Department of Social Services, and to my delight, I found out that they already had a good connection with our local animal control folks. So if they go into a house and there are animals that are not being cared for, they make referrals to the animal control, and then vice versa. Animal control is doing the same thing with them. So they already had a good relationship established. I didn't have to do anything other than compliment them. The other thing is we have a conference set up in September, and the Animal Legal Defense Fund is coming to my community to present, and we're very excited about that. The other thing I was going to mention is I have a bench card, and when folks come in to dissolve their protective order, it's usually women, of course, but when they come in to dissolve their protective order, I go through a long bench card with them to make sure they're going to be safe. So after that conference, or after the convening rather, I went back and updated my bench card and added a bunch of questions about pets. Like, has he ever harmed the pets? Has he threatened to harm the pets? Has he harmed animals in the presence of the children? And then I added in some of the statistics we learned at the convening so that I could educate these folks as I was asking questions. And I found I'm getting some good information from those questions, because a lot of these guys are, in fact, abusing the woman and abusing and or threatening the animals that are in the household. So I've found that very helpful.
That's fantastic, Judge Chitwood, and I'm going to return to that when we are working on the judicial training curriculum. As an example, for the training in June, as an example of specific things, for our second day when we have the action groups, I think that your bench card example will be a super thing to share with the folks as an example of something that judges can use on the bench. So, wow, thank you for developing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments about the convening, what you've done since the convening? I do have some specific things that I wanted to share with you about our own statistics on the Technical Assistance Bulletin. So maybe we can move to that next. Patricia, thanks. So we have been keeping tabs on our tab. So we have some specific information about our reach so far from the technical assistance bulletins that we know we have disseminated either at the annual conference last year or at conferences or other programs in the intervening time where we've been asked to provide technical assistance bulletins. So we've, looks like we gave out about 150 last year at the annual conference, and we've also distributed another 90 since then through requests. We've had 360 website downloads. So maybe Judge Taylor, you urging people to come to our website to look for the Technical Assistance Bulletin has led to that statistic. If you recall, we also, with your assistance, generated a policy resolution that got passed by the membership last July, and so we had an additional 63 downloads of the policy resolution. And then separate from these, this access on our website to our information, we had another 389 visits for pages related to the animal cruelty partnership and materials. So people are coming to the National Council's website looking for the resources, and we're happy to have them. And also just to mention that at the conference session last year that Judge Romero gave with Judge Taylor and Judge Figueroa, we had about 50 people in attendance. So that was really great to have a good interest in the topic. So,
Martha, if I may interrupt, we actually had 3 presenters, the 3 judges and Judge Figueroa's dog Rogelio, who was a big hit at that presentation.
Oh, yes, thank you. You know what, Judge Romero, I was just telling Patricia about Rogelio being part of that session, and I'm sure his presence really generated a certain kind of energy and dynamic in the room. The lighthearted side of it, but also bringing it home, the issues, how real they are and how important they are as pets being members of people's families. That's how they're viewed by a lot of people. So yeah, thank you. We need to give him credit as well, Rogelio. So I didn't know if there was anything in particular in the tab itself, and Patricia will bring up the table of contents, and then how we organize it, and then the different sections that we had put for each type of case: family violence, child abuse and neglect, juvenile offender, elder abuse, what judges need to know, legislation regarding this case type, and what judges can do. I didn't know if there was any parts of the technical assistance bulletin that you have found to be really helpful in your interactions with other colleagues, judges, or attorneys, or animal control officers, or anybody that you might be found yourself conversing with. If there's any specific aspects of the tab that you want to bring to our attention as being especially useful.
This is Judge Romero, and I think that what's always attention-grabbing are the photos, the graphics, and so forth that are in there. And a great job was done of putting that together. The downside of that is to try to download that and include it in as an attachment and send to someone else. It's impossible to do unless you use, because there's so much data involved with it. But saving it on a zip drive and taking it with you has been my approach to dealing with the PowerPoint and the tab itself.
Right, yes. I appreciate what you're saying, Judge Romero, that the photos and the graphics kind of really make the technical assistance pop. And same with the PowerPoint presentation, but also adds a lot of support materials, or whatever is the framework within the PowerPoint and the technical assistance bulletin that makes it quite large. So I wonder if some thought about streamlining some of the information that's in the technical assistance bulletin, so without the graphics, so that there may be more of the text that is just getting to the meat of things, would be something for us to consider. Some, I don't know, like 2-pagers or frequently asked questions or something like that, that maybe is more transportable and more readily communicated, via email or what have you. But that's a strength of the materials is also some of the things that makes it a bit cumbersome.
Martha, if I remember correctly, last year, before the annual conference and before the tab was actually released, you provided the 3 of us who were going to be presenting a text of essentially what's contained in the tab without the pictures and so forth. And I've actually saved that and used it for some of the things that I use to introduce people to it, that is in Word format. You can easily copy it and paste it. So that's already there, but I agree that consistent with other things that the council does, doing a 2-pager or front and back kind of thing with some of the highlights in it, with some the links to the tab itself or to text without the pictures for people to click on and get more info. That would be helpful, I think.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Any other thoughts along those lines for suggestions or experiences with the tab. Judge Taylor, we're happy to send you more hard copies if you're down to your last one. So
yeah,
I've just made a note of that.
If you can, that'd be wonderful. But I don't mind sending it to the website.
Yeah. No, and I must say that that's this technical assistance bulletin is something that Victor and I often smile about because we're both so proud of it, and I know Victor in particular, who's our communications manager, he put all the graphics and selected the photos, and it is really just a great piece of visually piece of information and a resource. In terms of, let's see, our next activities, Patricia, if you want to bring up, we have, and I've mentioned this maybe in passing in our conversation right now, we do have the animal cruelty judicial training that's coming up in June 8th and 9th here in Sparks, which is just right next door to Reno. And so we have openings for 25 judicial officers to come, and we will fund their travel. It's a day and a half training, and Judge Chitwood, who's on the call, and Judge Romero is also on the call, are faculty, and Judge Figueroa will be faculty as well. But just wanted to mention that and would invite Judge Taylor, in your communications, I know you have a different kind of assignment on a different bench now, but feel welcome to get the word out to colleagues that you may still be in touch with who are handling juvenile or family law cases. That the training opportunity is available. We'll be sending out an announcement on our website for people to register, and I'm working on the timing of that with Victor, but I just wanted to bring that out on the call. That's definitely happening. Another thing that I didn't include in the slide is that we have 2 webinars that we'll be working on and providing in this summer. One webinar will be specifically on child abuse and animal cruelty, and the other one will be on juvenile offending and animal cruelty. So I'll keep everybody updated about when those webinars will be scheduled so that, again, the word can get out. And in this case, the webinars would be open to anybody, not just judicial officers, but attorneys, anyone, social workers, child protective service workers, animal control folks, just anybody who has the time and the interest to participate in the webinar. So we'll get that information out. So other than those activities, then the judicial training, day and a half in June, and then the 2 webinars. That's kind of the main activities for our work with Animal Legal Defense Fund for 2020. But as Diane had mentioned at the beginning of the call, she and Laura, I think, and other folks at Animal Legal Defense Fund are also very interested in hearing from judges about what we might think about for 2021 and in the future of activities or products or other ways to continue to work in this field together as partners to get the word out to judges, to create new resources. Any thoughts?
This is Judge Taylor again. The one thought I've had throughout the year, and each state does things differently, but we constantly have new judges on the courts that handle these cases, either being appointed to the vacancies or being elected and unelected. And then there's, for those people that are newly taking the bench, there's, here in Georgia, there's new judge training. There's annual continuing education that they do, but there's always a block of training set aside for new judges, regardless of what bench you're on. And I was debating the other day about how to get this information in the hands of new judges that are going through new judge training. It's nice to include it in stuff that, for judges that have been around for 20 years, but getting it in the hands of new judges when they're even before they take the bench, they go through that new training, getting it at that point at the very start of their career would be something I think would be helpful. And it may be just a matter of contacting the administrative office of the courts for each state to find out when their new judge training, whatever class of court they have. You know, in Georgia we've got lots of classes of courts. Other states are more streamlined, but finding a way to at least get this technical bulletin into the hands or as part of the information they pass out in their goodie bag or something, and catch these judges before they even take the bench and educate them at that point. Maybe something that's helpful in getting the word out and keeping it out.
Great. Thank you so much, Attila. That's a super idea. Thanks.
I'd say the same thing in Virginia. I don't think the new judges are getting any component of this in their training. If we could do it at the new judge training, you could get both the juvenile judges like myself and the district court judges who hear most of the animal cruelty cases. You could have a combined training for both sets of judges.
Super. Makes sense. Okay, great.
This is Judge Romero, and Martha, I believe I sent to you the PowerPoint from Judge Cosgrove Aguilar, who serves in a court of limited jurisdiction, a misdemeanor court here in Bernalillo County, and through her efforts of collaborating with a whole host of stakeholders in the community, they established something called PAWS Court, or Pre-Adjudication Services, something, I forget what it is, but I'm not sure that judges who serve in misdemeanor courts, other than state trial court jurisdictional courts, are getting this, and they're the ones dealing with the folks who are alleged to have committed animal cruelty, and to reach them through those courts of limited jurisdiction may be something to focus on as well. Then my own selfish view is that the folks who work in child protection services, particularly those who do the initial investigative work, what kind of training is being provided to them? As far as I know, in New Mexico, none of the training that addresses animal cruelty and even having an awareness that when they do a dirty home inspection and considering the welfare of the child and whether to remove the child, it's not unusual that dog feces, cat urine, pets all over the place are mentioned, but that's the last we hear of them unless I and some other obnoxious judge asks about it at the initial hearings. What happened to the animals? What connection did this child have to the animal? Does anyone ask the child about whether she's seen her pet or wants to see her pet or his pet? That training, I believe, needs to get to the child welfare folks to have that aspect of it working as well. Obviously, they're overwhelmed with things that they have to learn every year, and they're criticized by everyone in the community, so to put more on their plate may seem illogical, but on the other hand, if it helps a kid and a family be reunified and things get fixed so that kids are safe with their own biological family, it's worth it. But that's some fleeting Pollyannish thoughts on my part.
And this is Kathleen.
Yeah, Kathleen. Oh, good. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was just going to say there are, several, or about half the states that have cross-reporting laws. Actually, I should say only about 16 states that have cross-reporting laws that permit Child Protective Services to report suspected animal cruelty when they encounter it in their work. And so presumably in those states, they are getting some degree of training in terms of what to look for and how to report that. But I believe it's only in West Virginia that it's actually mandatory for them to report. And then some social services workers in Illinois also are required. And they're actually looking at how to create a training for Child Protective Services right now in Massachusetts because of the PAWS 2 Act that they recently passed. So I know several members of the National Link Coalition have been in on those committee meetings to try to structure what those trainings would look like. So that might be worth collaborating with them to see how they think these trainings should be implemented in best practices. And then I also wanted to circle back to the file size of the tab. I just double checked and it's about 7 megabytes, and it should, when it's downloaded as a PDF, so that should be fairly easy to email. I believe Outlook has a max file size of 20 megabytes, and Gmail is actually up to 50 now.
And that's what the Children's Law Institute folks did, and also the Institute of Public Law folks. After I provided them the actual PowerPoint and presentation, they converted it to a PDF file and distributed it to the participants in that manner.
Super. Great. Great. You know, I know, Judge Romero, your question about training of Child Protective Services workers in one of our project areas where we work with teams to implement recommended practices around child abuse and neglect, it makes me want to check with my colleagues to see what communication, what materials we could pass on to them in their work with the court teams that are involved in that project. So your question makes me want to talk to Adria about how animal cruelty issues might come up or be in their minds when they're out talking with their teams and meeting with the interdisciplinary teams that include Child Protective Services folks. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So Martha, next Thursday and half a day Friday, right there in Reno, there's a convening of a few folks to consider a review of the Child Abuse and Neglect Institute curriculum. And I was to give my input on adjudication and dispositional hearings and also the medical part of it. So I had occasion to send that to Adria with a lot of inserts about, where it talks about in our enhanced resource guidelines about ensuring family time and communication between parents and kid, or parents and or children and other significant others, to include in there, and pets. So in looking at the enhanced resource guidelines and what is the curriculum guide for faculty for the CANI, it is devoid of any mention of animal cruelty. So I think your instinct to talk to Adria about that, and she's the one that's convening us to talk about this curriculum review. The time is right.
Perfect. Oh, good. Thanks for bringing that up. I knew that CANI, the curriculum, the Child Abuse and Neglect Institute, for our Animal Legal Defense Fund colleagues, this is CANI training is a signature training that the NCJFCJ has been putting on for 25 plus years. And so this is really, we're known for this training, and it's a week-long training for oftentimes new judges new to the dependency bench, but it's not limited to somebody to be newly assigned. You could be somebody who's been on the bench for a while, but it's intensive training on recommended practices, and it's kind of tied to our, as Judge Romero mentioned, the enhanced resource guidelines. The resource guidelines are kind of the Bible, if you will, for judges handling child abuse and neglect cases. And so we've had kind of the same curriculum. We followed the same curriculum for a number of years, and this year it's up for review and revision. And so the timing, as Judge Romero mentioned, is right to make some adjustments to include this new expertise that we have and resources. So thank you I had forgotten that Adria was pivotal in that curriculum revision. So thank you for that reminder, Judge Romero.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts about future partner activities or things that we might think about creating down the road, Animal Legal Defense Fund and NCJFCJ? And Animal Legal Defense Fund colleagues, please chime in here if there's specific questions that you have or ideas that you wanted to bounce off of the judges.
while you all are thinking about that, one of the things I recall from our convening last year in Reno, and then from multiple times looking at the website, the link, there are a lot of resources on there and a lot of information that unless you have the time to look through it, I think it's not looked at. So, for example, if I remember correctly, there were a number of sections that had to do with actual cases that took place in various jurisdictions and the outcomes of those cases, some of them good and some of them bad. But that kind of resource distilled to a way that can be handed out to other judges, lawyers who are used to reading case law and looking at what is taking place in various jurisdictions might be helpful as well. Something that ALDF is already doing, I think, and contributing to that link website.
Thank you, Judge. This is Jamie Contreras from ALDF. I'm coming to this new, and so forgive me if you've discussed some of these things. But it seemed like I was intrigued by the idea of contributing to new judge trainings, and like you said, the tab was created for judges who are experienced, who have been doing this for a while, or who are already on the bench. Is there anything particular to a new judge training? Is there more information, less information? What do you think would be the best resources that we could provide? I mean, thinking ahead of future products, future partnerships. Is there anything different that you would do for a new judge training than we've already done?
Yeah, this is Judge Taylor again, and I have not been to the other training sessions, and I think this our technical bulletin is fantastic, right? But I think for new judge training, maybe this with a supplement that is perhaps I hate to say a step-by-step kind of guide, but maybe that's the idea of what you're looking for, examples, maybe case examples, fact pattern examples. Most of these people that are new judges, are just former lawyers, largely former prosecutors, haven't had a whole lot of dealings with animal cruelty cases by and large, and they're just they're just brand new to that. Now I've got to drop the advocate side of me and become that neutral and detached. How do I approach these cases? How do I look at it? What do I look for? And it may be a step-by-step approach where we have some cases, just cases randomly throughout the country that can show various fact patterns to say, hey, this is what happens, this is what you need to look for. Whether it's issuing just the initial arrest warrant, issuing a search warrant, what things that can look for, how they handle the cases. I think that card that was talked about before would be a great idea to include in that. Here's a checklist of questions new to the bench you can have in front of you to ask regarding animal things, and that could be whether you're doing, whether there's animal cruelty specific issues or temporary protective orders or, some of these entry-level courts. So that kind of idea, bulletin is fantastic, but something that's distilled, outlined, step-by-step case example, I think for the newly minted judges would be helpful in wrapping their head around this problem, and because it goes so far and wide they can get lost in it, I think.
Sure, that makes complete sense to me. Now, are there is there, I don't know, maybe this is something that if you're not talking about, juvenile and family courts, you're talking about, general jurisdiction judges. Is that, does anybody happen to know if NJC does any sort of new judge training, or is this kind of a state-by-state thing?
NJC has 2 initial judge training things. I know they just recently did an animal thing that was largely online, but traditionally the National Judicial College does a 2-week general jurisdiction class and a 2-week special jurisdiction class. General jurisdiction, obviously, for your gen jur judges, special jurisdiction for the limited jurisdiction courts. I'm sure that they would be interested in including something. They recently did their own animal training. So, but a lot of those judges in those classes are new judges, but not every one of them.
This is Diane. I did that training for the National Judicial College, and it went very well. It was their first training on animal crimes. And the balance, it's a whole series of 7 webinars all on animal law, all facets of animal law. And I did just 2 sessions on criminal issues. And it was very well received.
Yeah,
and I watched, and they were fantastic.
When I went through most of the class, it's been a number of years since I've completed my classwork there, but I don't recall any class ever having anything to do with animals, whether it was in the special jurisdiction class or anything subsequent to that. So maybe NJC is willing to branch out and do it now that they've done this 7-part series. But having some ready-made material for them, certainly, I'm sure they wouldn't turn it down. But you never know.
Sure, I'm just thinking the best way to reach, new judges.
I think really, and it's a bit of a legwork, but the administrative office of the courts for each state, and you could just hit the more populous states if you wanted to, but I think they usually maintain the list. There's either the administrative office of the courts or an Institute of Continuing Judicial Education, and usually those 2 organizations in each state kind of work hand in hand. They would be the contact, initial contact. Again, even if we provided a bulletin plus a supplement for new judges that broke things down into some more basic concepts and examples would help, and that could be distributed in their goodie bag. We could do a PowerPoint presentation that could be available for each state. Sounds like Diane can do webinars these days, so we can maybe recruit her to do one. They can just log in and play the video, have it downloadable.
It's a great, inexpensive way to reach a lot of people, and the NCJ-FCJ platform was excellent, by the way.
Yeah, so that would be my suggestion.
So on the issue of new judges, the National Council has had, on alternating years, and my understanding it's going to be every year now, an Institute for New Juvenile and Family Court Judges training. That happens, I want to say, the week of the 21st of April of this year. I've been involved as faculty in that several times, and I don't recall ever having anything there that has to do with this subject. So, Martha, you have greater access to Amy Satoff than I do, proximity-wise, and putting the bug in her ear, maybe at a minimum, having just a short blurb about it, and I'd be happy to do that if Amy's okay with it, because she's the boss of the thing. But certainly making the technical assistance bulletins or something like that available to those judges. And the judges that come to the Institute for New Juvenile and Family Court Judges come from multiple jurisdictions. So to say they're juvenile and family court judges sometimes is a misnomer, because some of the rural areas, as we all know, one judge does everything. So they may do juvenile and family court stuff, but they also do murder cases and foreclosure stuff and so forth. So they may be in a great position to be, have the information about it, because they touch everything, not just juvenile and family court.
Right. Thank you, Judge Romero. I was just thinking about that our New Judges Institute, and that we are having it this year, and wanting to check in with Amy about the curriculum and opportunities. So thank you.
This is Kathleen again. I was just going to say that I think that you all sent around earlier this year, South Carolina recently required judges to undergo a few hours of training on animal cruelty issues each year. And so I was just wondering if anybody had any insight as to what they are doing to put on those trainings and what kind of material they're covering. And if not, maybe that's something we should look into.
I'm not aware, but that sounds like a great suggestion. We can, no sense in reinventing the wheel if they're already doing something that we can piggyback on with their permission.
Yeah, I'm probably the closest state to them, and I have no idea what they're doing, except losing national football games.
Next year. Well, this year actually already.
This year, that's right, this year.
Well, we've nearing the end of our time together. I hope it's been productive. I've learned a lot. Our colleagues at Animal Legal Defense Fund, Kathleen, Jamie, Laura, and Diane, I just want to check in with you to make sure that you have received the kind of information and input that you were hoping to receive today from the judges. If there's anything else if you wanted to ask or note.
Well, this is Laura. I guess.
Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Jamie.
go ahead. Oh, I just wanted to say, if there's anything, since I know we've kind of sketched out what we're going to be covering for the upcoming training, but I just want to emphasize that as Diane said earlier, we are very flexible. We want to do what's most helpful. So if there's anything in particular that you think we should cover that we maybe weren't planning to cover, please don't hesitate to let us know.
And this is Laura. I just wanted to add, in terms of today, this was wonderful. We love hearing, and I can say that other folks within ALDF love hearing about how this project is really impacting local communities and courts as well. And it's really helpful for us to have this kind of feedback, just in terms of planning future work in partnership with MCJ, FCJ. And Judge Romero and others, we also really appreciate the email updates that Martha shares with us. So keep those coming as much as you're able, and thank you for those.
This is good stuff. It's impossible not to share it.
Thank you, Judge Romero. Sherry, I know, I'm not sure if you're still on the call. If you had any remarks, yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for their time, and I think that some of the immediate next steps that Martha and I can take will to begin talking to our staff internally about our own New Judges Institute and our Child Abuse and Neglect Institute, and then just generally with our child abuse and neglect staff about site visits and training for courts locally. So this has been really helpful today. Thank you.